Throughout history, dangerous sects and cults have wreaked havoc on society, causing immense suffering and loss of life. This video delves into the top 10 most dangerous sects in the world, examining their beliefs, practices, and the impact they have had on their followers and the world at large. By exploring these infamous groups, we aim to raise awareness of the dangers they pose and encourage vigilance against future extremist organizations. Number 1. The Manson Family. The Manson family was a notorious cult led by the charismatic and manipulative Charles Manson, which emerged in the late 1960s in California. The group consisted primarily of young, disenchanted individuals who were seeking an alternative lifestyle and found solace in Manson's vision of a utopian society. Manson, a failed musician and career criminal, had a magnetic personality that attracted vulnerable and impressionable followers, whom he controlled through a combination of psychological manipulation, drugs, and promises of a better future. At the core of Manson's beliefs was the concept of helter-skelter, a term he borrowed from the Beatles' song of the same name. He believed that an apocalyptic race war was imminent, and that the Manson family was destined to survive this war by hiding in an underground city. After the war, they would emerge as rulers of a new world order. To hasten the arrival of helter-skelter, Manson ordered his followers to commit a series of brutal murders, intending to incite further violence and social unrest. The Manson family's most infamous crimes took place over 2 nights in August 1969. On August 8th, Manson ordered a group of his followers, including Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Tex Watson, to the home of actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, was brutally murdered along with 4 other people at the residence. The following night, Manson himself accompanied a group of his followers, including Leslie Van Houten, to the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, where the couple was murdered in a similarly brutal fashion. The murders were characterized by their extreme violence and the cryptic messages written in the victims' blood at the crime scenes. These messages, such as "Death to Pigs" and "Helter-Skelter Siek," were intended to implicate the Black Panthers and incite a race war. However, the police investigation eventually led to the arrest and conviction of Manson and several of his followers. Manson was initially sentenced to death, but his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment when the death penalty was temporarily abolished in California in 1972. He died in prison in 2017. The Manson family murders shocked the world and marked the end of the idealism and innocence associated with the 1960s counterculture. The group's gruesome crimes, combined with Manson's twisted philosophies and manipulation of his followers, make them one of the most dangerous sects in history. The influence of the Manson family persists to this day, as the group has been the subject of countless books, movies, and documentaries, and Manson himself remains a symbol of the dark side of human nature. While the majority of Manson's followers were arrested and convicted for their roles in the murders, some have been released on parole in recent years. The enduring fascination with the Manson family serves as a reminder of the potential for charismatic leaders to exploit vulnerable individuals and the devastating consequences that can arise from extremist beliefs and unchecked power. Number 2. The Aum Shinrikyo cult. Aum Shinrikyo, also known as Aleph, was a Japanese doomsday cult founded by Shoko Asahara in 1984. Asahara, a partially blind yoga teacher, established the group as a blend of religious teachings, including elements of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. He claimed to be a divine savior and prophesied an imminent apocalyptic event with only his followers destined to survive. At its peak, Aum Shinrikyo attracted thousands of members, many of whom were highly educated individuals drawn to the group's promise of spiritual enlightenment and salvation. Asahara's teachings centered around the idea that the world was on the brink of destruction and that only those who followed his teachings would be saved. As the cult grew in size and power, it began amassing an arsenal of weapons, including firearms, explosives, and even the components needed to produce a nuclear bomb. The group's ultimate goal was to hasten the apocalypse and establish a new world order under Asahara's rule. Aum Shinrikyo is most notorious for its 1995 sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system, which killed 13 people and injured over 5,000 others. The attack was orchestrated by Asahara and his senior followers, who believed that the Japanese government was plotting against them and that the attack would derail any efforts to suppress the cult. The incident shocked Japan and the world, bringing international attention to the dangers posed by the group. In the wake of the subway attack, Japanese authorities launched a massive crackdown on Aum Shinrikyo, arresting hundreds of members and uncovering evidence of the group's extensive criminal activities. These activities included not only the production of chemical and biological weapons, but also kidnapping, murder, and extortion. Asahara and many of his senior followers were arrested, tried, and eventually executed for their roles in the cult's crimes. The sarin gas attack and subsequent arrests led to the dismantling of Aum Shinrikyo's infrastructure and a significant decline in its membership. However, the group has not disappeared entirely. In 2000, it rebranded itself as Aleph and has since attempted to distance itself from its violent past, focusing on spiritual teachings and charitable work. Despite these efforts, the Japanese government still classifies the group as a terrorist organization, and it remains under strict surveillance. The Aum Shinrikyo cult stands as one of the most dangerous sects in history due to its combination of apocalyptic beliefs, charismatic leadership, and willingness to engage in acts of terrorism. Its ability to recruit educated, seemingly rational individuals highlights the power of manipulation and the vulnerability of people seeking spiritual fulfillment. The legacy of the cult serves as a reminder of the devastating consequences that can result from the unchecked growth of extremist organizations and the importance of vigilance against the rise of similar groups in the future. Number 3. The People's Temple. The People's Temple was a religious organization founded by Jim Jones in the 1950s in Indianapolis, Indiana. Initially, the group garnered attention for its progressive social stances, promoting racial integration and social justice. As the organization grew, Jones cultivated a following with his charisma and claims of supernatural healing powers. However, beneath the surface, the group had a darker side marked by Jones' increasing authoritarianism, manipulation, and abuse of his followers. In the 1970s, the People's Temple relocated to San Francisco, where it gained political influence and attracted even more members. Jones' growing paranoia and fear of persecution led him to establish a remote commune in Guyana, which he named Jonestown, as a haven for his followers. He envisioned Jonestown as a utopian socialist community, free from the perceived evils of the outside world. Over 900 members of the People's Temple relocated to Jonestown, where they became increasingly isolated and subjected to Jones's increasingly erratic behavior and authoritarian rule. Life in Jonestown was far from the paradise that Jones had promised. Followers were subjected to grueling labor, food shortages, and physical and psychological abuse. Jones used various tactics to maintain control, including public humiliation, threats of violence, and the use of armed guards to prevent defections. He also forced his followers to participate in so-called white nights, simulated mass suicide drills designed to test their loyalty and prepare them for the possibility of a real suicide event. The People's Temple came under intense scrutiny after the defection of several high-ranking members and the murder of a U.S. Congressman, Leo Ryan, who was investigating the group's activities in Guyana. On November 18, 1978, as the situation in Jonestown reached a boiling point, Jones ordered his followers to commit mass suicide by drinking a cyanide-laced fruit punch, a grim event that has come to be known as the Jonestown Massacre. In total, over 900 people died, including more than 300 children, making it the largest loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act until the September 11th attacks. The tragedy of Jonestown serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by extremist groups and charismatic leaders. Jones was able to manipulate and control his followers by exploiting their fears, insecurities, and desire for a better life. The resulting mass suicide is a chilling example of the potential consequences of unchecked power and blind devotion to a single individual. The People's Temple and the Jonestown Massacre have had a lasting impact on popular culture and the public's perception of cults. The phrase, "drinking the Kool-Aid," which has come to mean unquestioning obedience or acceptance of a dangerous idea, originated from the Jonestown tragedy. This dark chapter in history serves as a warning about the potential for violence and destruction when individuals surrender their autonomy and critical thinking to a charismatic leader with a dangerous agenda. Number 4. The Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians were a religious sect that originated from a schism within the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the 1930s. The group, led by Victor Hautef, established a small commune near Waco, Texas, and followed a distinct set of beliefs, including an emphasis on the imminent return of Jesus Christ and the establishment of a Davidic kingdom on earth. Following Hautef's death in 1955, the group underwent several leadership changes and splintered into factions. In the early 1980s, Vernon Howell, who would later adopt the name David Koresh, emerged as the group's leader. Koresh claimed to be the final prophet of the Branch Davidians and preached a radical interpretation of the Bible that included apocalyptic prophecies and a divine directive to take multiple wives, some as young as 12 years old. Under his leadership, the group became increasingly insular and began stockpiling weapons in preparation for what they believed would be an imminent confrontation with the forces of evil. In February 1993, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, launched a raid on the Branch Davidians compound, known as Mount Carmel, in an attempt to execute a search warrant related to illegal firearms possession. The raid resulted in a shootout between the ATF agents and the Branch Davidians, leaving 4 agents and 6 Davidians dead. This event sparked a 51-day standoff between the sect and federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI. The standoff culminated in a controversial assault on the compound on April 19, 1993. The FBI used tanks to insert tear gas into the buildings in an attempt to force the occupants to surrender. However, a fire broke out, engulfing the compound and resulting in the deaths of 76 people, including Koresh and 25 children. The exact cause of the fire remains a subject of debate, with some arguing that it was started by the FBI's actions, while others contend that the Branch Davidians set the fire themselves, either as a final act of defiance or as part of a suicide pact. The Waco siege, as it came to be known, was a tragedy that raised significant questions about the handling of the situation by federal law enforcement agencies. The events at Waco have been criticized for the use of excessive force, the lack of a clear plan to resolve the standoff peacefully, and the potential violation of the constitutional rights of the Branch Davidians. In the years following the siege, there have been numerous investigations, documentaries, and books examining the events leading up to and during the standoff, as well as the broader issues surrounding the actions of federal law enforcement agencies. The Branch Davidians represent a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of extremist religious beliefs, unchecked power, and the escalation of conflict between authorities and insular communities. The tragic outcome of the Waco siege underscores the importance of understanding and addressing the underlying causes of radicalization and the need for law enforcement agencies to balance the enforcement of laws with the protection of individual rights and the pursuit of peaceful resolutions in conflicts with extremist groups. Number 5. The Order of the Solar Temple. The Order of the Solar Temple, also known as the International Chivalric Organization of the Solar Tradition, was a secret society and doomsday cult founded in 1984 by Joseph DiMambro and Luc Jouret. The group's beliefs were an eclectic mix of Christian esotericism, New Age spirituality, and conspiracy theories, with an emphasis on the imminent approach of the apocalypse and the idea that members would be spiritually transformed and ascend to a higher plane of existence. DiMambro and Jouret, both charismatic leaders, attracted followers with their promises of spiritual enlightenment and secret knowledge. The Order of the Solar Temple operated in several countries, including Switzerland, France, and Canada, and attracted a diverse membership, including affluent and well-educated individuals. The group maintained a veil of secrecy, conducting elaborate initiation ceremonies and promoting a strict hierarchy among its members. The Order of the Solar Temple gained international notoriety in the early 1990s when a series of murder-suicides rocked the organization. In October 1994, 53 members of the cult were found dead in Switzerland and Canada in what appeared to be a coordinated series of ritual murders and mass suicides. Many of the victims were found in carefully arranged positions, dressed in ceremonial robes and surrounded by symbols associated with the group's beliefs. The deaths were later revealed to have been orchestrated by Di Mambro and Jure, who also perished in the events. The shocking deaths prompted an international investigation into the group's activities, revealing a dark underbelly of manipulation, financial fraud, and psychological control. Di Mambro and Jared had used their positions of power within the organization to exploit their followers, both financially and emotionally, while preparing them for a supposed spiritual transformation that would occur through their deaths. The tragedy of the Order of the Solar Temple serves as a chilling reminder of the potential dangers of secretive and insular organizations with extreme beliefs. The group's leaders were able to manipulate their followers into committing acts of violence and self-destruction through a combination of charisma, secrecy, and promises of spiritual salvation. The events also highlight the importance of recognizing and addressing the warning signs of radicalization and extremist beliefs within communities. The legacy of the Order of the Solar Temple endures as a cautionary tale about the allure of secret societies, the power of charismatic leaders, and the devastating consequences of unchecked extremism. The group's tragic end underscores the need for continued vigilance against the rise of similar organizations and the importance of fostering open dialogue and critical thinking within society to counteract the influence of dangerous and manipulative ideologies.
Number 8. The Church of Scientology. The Church of Scientology is a controversial religious organization founded in the early 1950s by science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard. The Church's teachings are based on Hubbard's book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, which promotes the idea that humans are essentially spiritual beings, known as thetans, and that our spiritual well-being depends on overcoming negative experiences, called engrams, stored in our subconscious minds. Scientology offers a process called auditing, in which an individual works with an auditor to recall and address past traumas, with the ultimate goal of achieving a state of spiritual enlightenment called clear. Scientologists believe that by attaining this state, individuals can unlock their full potential, overcome emotional and physical ailments, and lead happier, more fulfilling lives. The Church of Scientology has attracted a significant following, including many high-profile celebrities, and has established a network of churches, or orgs, around the world. However, the organization has also been the subject of numerous controversies and allegations of abusive practices, financial exploitation, and intimidation tactics. One of the most concerning aspects of Scientology is the alleged culture of control and manipulation within the organization. Former members have reported instances of physical and psychological abuse, forced labor, and extreme pressure to donate large sums of money to the church. Critics argue that the church's auditing process can be invasive and manipulative, with personal information gathered during sessions potentially being used to blackmail or control members. Another point of contention is the church's aggressive stance towards its critics and perceived enemies, including former members who have spoken out against the organization. The Church of Scientology has a history of engaging in litigation, surveillance, and harassment against its critics, a practice that has been dubbed fair game by some observers. The church denies these allegations, claiming that its actions are aimed at defending its religious beliefs and practices from external attacks. The Church of Scientology also operates a controversial program called the Rehabilitation Project Force, RPF, which has been described by critics as a form of punitive labor and re-education for members who have violated the organization's rules or failed to meet performance expectations. Former RPF participants have reported harsh living conditions, long hours of labor, and the use of physical and psychological coercion to maintain compliance. Despite the controversies surrounding the Church of Scientology, it continues to maintain a loyal following and enjoys tax-exempt status as a religious organization in the United States. However, several European countries, including Germany and France, have taken a more critical view of the Church, with some labeling it a dangerous cult or denying it recognition as a legitimate religious organization. The Church of Scientology serves as an example of the complex and often controversial nature of new religious movements. While the organization claims to offer a path to spiritual enlightenment and personal growth, its practices and internal culture have raised significant concerns about the potential for abuse and exploitation within its ranks. The ongoing debate surrounding Scientology highlights the challenges faced by society in balancing the protection of religious freedom with the need to address the potential dangers posed by extremist beliefs and practices.
Number 9. The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, FLDS. The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, FLDS, is a religious sect that split from the mainstream Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, in the early 20th century. The group's primary point of divergence from the LDS Church is its continued practice of polygamy, which was officially renounced by the mainstream Church in 1890. The FLDS has been classified as an extremist group due to its radical beliefs, secretive nature, and numerous allegations of abuse and criminal activities. The FLDS is primarily based in the isolated communities of Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah, but also has followers in other parts of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The group has been led by a succession of self-proclaimed prophets, the most notorious of whom was Warren Jeffs, who assumed leadership of the FLDS in 2002. Under Jeffs' leadership, the FLDS became increasingly insular and authoritarian. He instituted a range of strict rules and practices, including the assignment of wives to men, the expulsion of young men from the community to reduce competition for wives, and the complete control of members' lives, from their clothing and hairstyles to their access to the outside world. Jeffs' rule was marked by widespread allegations of physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, including the forced marriage of underage girls to older men and the use of religion to manipulate and control members. In 2006, Jeffs was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list and was eventually captured and convicted on charges of accomplice to rape for his role in arranging the marriages of underage girls. He was sentenced to life in prison, plus 20 years, but continues to exert influence over the FLDS from behind bars, with loyal followers reportedly receiving and following his instructions. The FLDS has faced increasing scrutiny from law enforcement agencies and the media in recent years, with several high-profile cases exposing the group's abusive practices and prompting calls for action to protect vulnerable members. In 2008, a raid on the FLDS's Yearning for Zion Ranch in Texas resulted in the removal of over 400 children from the community due to concerns for their safety. Although many of the children were later returned to their families, the raid brought the issue of child protection within the FLDS to the forefront of public consciousness. The FLDS serves as a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of religious extremism and the abuse of power by charismatic leaders. The group's secretive nature and isolation from mainstream society have facilitated a culture of control, manipulation, and abuse, with vulnerable individuals, particularly women and children, bearing the brunt of the harm. The case of the FLDS highlights the importance of vigilance in monitoring and addressing the activities of extremist groups and the need to balance respect for religious freedom with the protection of individual rights and the pursuit of justice for victims of abuse. Efforts to address the problems within the FLDS are ongoing, with former members and activists working to provide support and resources for those seeking to leave the group or adjust to life outside its confines. The story of the FLDS underscores the importance of fostering open dialogue, critical thinking, and empathy as a means of counteracting the allure of extremist ideologies and promoting healing and recovery for those affected by them. Number 10. Boko Haram. Boko Haram, a militant Islamist group, emerged in Nigeria in the early 2000s and has since gained notoriety for its brutal tactics and a series of high-profile attacks across the region. The group's name, which translates to Western education is forbidden in the local Hausa language, reflects its opposition to secular education and its aim to establish an Islamic state governed by strict Sharia law. Boko Haram has been designated as a terrorist organization by various countries and international bodies, including the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations. The group was founded by Muhammad Yusuf, an Islamic preacher who espoused a radical interpretation of Islam and sought to establish a theocratic state in Nigeria. Following Yusuf's death in police custody in 2009, Boko Haram became even more radical under the leadership of Abubakar Shekau, launching a violent insurgency that has devastated communities in Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. Boko Haram's tactics have included bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, and mass shootings, with a particular focus on targeting civilians, schools, and religious institutions. The group gained international attention in 2014 when it kidnapped more than 200 schoolgirls from the town of Chibok, sparking a global outcry and the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. Many of the Chibok girls have since been released or escaped, but others remain unaccounted for. In addition to its attacks on civilian targets, Boko Haram has engaged in a protracted conflict with regional security forces, leading to the displacement of millions of people and a severe humanitarian crisis. The group's activities have contributed to widespread food insecurity, malnutrition, and disease in affected areas, further exacerbating the suffering of local populations. In 2015, Boko Haram pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, ISIS, and rebranded itself as the Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP. However, internal divisions within the group have since emerged, with a faction led by Abu Musab al-Barnawi breaking away from Shekau's leadership to form a separate organization that continues to operate under the ISWAP name. Despite these internal conflicts, both factions remain committed to their extremist ideology and continue to pose a significant threat to regional security. Efforts to combat Boko Haram have included regional military operations and international support in the form of intelligence sharing, training, and equipment. While these efforts have led to some successes in weakening the group and reclaiming territory, Boko Haram has proven to be a resilient adversary, adapting its tactics and exploiting the region's porous borders and governance challenges to maintain its activities. Boko Haram's ongoing insurgency underscores the complex and multifaceted nature of the threat posed by extremist groups and the challenges associated with addressing their root causes. The group's ability to exploit existing social, economic, and political grievances in the region highlights the need for a comprehensive approach to counterterrorism that includes not only military and security measures, but also initiatives to address the underlying factors that fuel extremism. This includes promoting social cohesion, fostering economic development, strengthening governance, and ensuring access to quality education and social services. Ultimately, the fight against Boko Haram and similar extremist organizations requires a sustained and coordinated effort by governments, regional organizations, and the international community to address both the immediate security threats and the long-term factors that contribute to the spread of violent extremism.